let's go to the, so when we are looking at this particular course, the Oracle Financials Cloud, so this course can be, helpful to the variety of people, people who would like to become eventually maybe, implementation consultants. Yes. So we will be, talking about the setups which are related to implementation. Yeah. Also, maybe, certain places we will talk about, the maybe how data conversion can happen, maybe how data can be imported into the system. And obviously, we would like to understand the processes, like, for example, maybe how invoice gets processed, or maybe how purchase order to maybe invoice, AP invoice matching happens, or maybe how AR invoice gets generated, and then probably how do we receive the payment against the invoice? How do we make the payment against maybe AP invoice? So those are the business processes, and we would like to understand those and variety of features which are available around those processes. So that is the primary, focus from the perspective of people who would like to become eventually a new implementation consultant, or there are people, who are migrating probably from, let's say, EBS to maybe cloud, or maybe there are people who are migrating from PeopleSoft to cloud. Yeah. And, there are maybe people who are migrating from SAP to cloud. Yeah. So they are already consultants, but they are moving from one, maybe the platform to cloud platform, and they would like to understand. So maybe, yeah, that's where again they would like to understand how this particular product works, and maybe what are the structural components of this particular product, or there could be eventually the people who might be responsible for, playing a role of a techno-functional kind of a role, wherein probably you are supporting, you're probably doing some, problem solving for your implementation for your business, and maybe in the process you would like to have a bit of technical background and bit of functional background. So yes, we are definitely addressing largely the functional in this particular course. Yeah. And maybe we'll be talking about a bit of reporting towards the end. I guess the last 4 to 5 sessions will be exclusively on reports, and that will help, to assist probably your business users to understand how we can go about writing the reports or extracting the information, or even if you have to probably extract some information sometime as maybe a support person, or maybe, person who is probably understanding maybe the business process at your implementation, how you can probably assist by looking at the data. You can probably make use of some of these tools, So these are probably the, a set of people you might also experience in the class also, who might come and join. Like I was just talking to one person who might be joining tomorrow's class. He is coming from an SAP background, and he is coming from a background where he is an end user, and his journey is going to be moving towards implementation consultant. So that's maybe where there is a end user experience in some product, and you will be now becoming gradually implementation consultant in this particular product. So this is how the course is also going to be organized. And maybe for now, if I could just give you a little bit of an understanding at a maybe high level overview of how Oracle Financials Cloud maybe is, probably designed, or maybe the various components of Oracle Financials Cloud, and maybe accounting process at large, and how maybe that accounting process can be visualized for the entire product. So if I look at, to begin with, maybe we have a general ledger application in Financials Cloud, and this general ledger application is responsible for having all the accounting data. So it's a primary source of all the accounting data, and that accounting data is organized and managed by general ledger. So how do general ledger get the accounting data? General ledger gets the accounting data by way of journals. So we get journals into maybe GL, and journals can come from variety of sources. Maybe journal can come from maybe, let's say, manual source. We go ahead and probably do some data entry into GL and get the journal, or we might probably get a journal from an external sources. Yeah, or maybe the journals can come from maybe our subledgers. So journals can come from a variety of sources, and those journals eventually will be posted in GL. So we'll have maybe a kind of a posting, and that posted balances will be then be there in GL, and maybe those posted balances is our primary source for extracting all sorts of reports from GL. So maybe you might have maybe this posted journals, and those posted journals will eventually be impacting the posted balances. Okay, and that those posted balances are organized in the cube. So we have maybe the balance cube, and the balance cube is managing maybe the posted balances of the accounts, and you can then utilize your balance cube to extract all your reports. So all your reports are then extracted from the balance cube. For example, our professional reports, like maybe the P&L, yeah, or maybe let's say, for example, maybe the balance sheet, yeah. So those professional reports are extracted maybe from the typical, maybe our accounting reports are extracted based on maybe the posted balances which are available in the balance cube. So that could be maybe the end result which we are at the end of the day we are expecting from maybe the financials cloud. Yes, Vijay. I think Vijay has also come, and I think there's one more gentleman has come in the class. Yeah, please welcome to the class. And this is a demo class, just in case if you have just joined, and I'm just walking you through at this point a very high level overview of the Oracle Financials Cloud, and maybe how to visualize maybe the Oracle Financials Cloud various applications, and this is going to be the scope of our, the course as well eventually, yeah. So maybe in the Financials Cloud, we have a general ledger, and general ledger would be having journals, and journals will be eventually posted, and we'll have posted balances. And journals can come from various sources. One potential source of the journal could be a manual source. We might probably manually enter the journal into maybe our system, yeah, and maybe we can have manual journals, or we will bring the journals from the variety of subsystem. So this is very important to understand the flow. And so even if you're going to become an implementation consultant, or maybe you're going to be a support person, if you do not get the knowledge of the product, how it behaves, what are the various process flows in the particular product, you will not be able to provide an appropriate solution, or you will not be able to do a problem solving also. So both these roles requires you to have a very good high level understanding of the process flows. And then once you know the process flows, then we would like to know the setups, maybe, yeah, okay, we need to do certain configurations in order to have our journals. Maybe I should have some ledger being set up, maybe I should have maybe, some chart of accounts probably being set up, yeah. So those kind of maybe the setups will be required, and those setups are going to drive maybe our actual processes, and also maybe these setups will be required to be done for a fresh implementation also. So as an implementation consultant, we would like to know how ledger is set up, maybe how chart of accounts are designed, maybe how calendar is defined, maybe how currency is enabled, maybe how convention is defined, and maybe the conversion rates are defined. So those are the kind of setups which we have in GL, and those setups are then eventually being shared with all the subledger applications, and these setups are driving this process flow, and ultimately we are extracting the reports. Now, manual journal is one possible option to have, but we don't create manually the journal in real life business. In real life business, manual journals are typically done for adjustments or towards the end of the period, but otherwise we get the journals from the various subsystems like payables or receivables, and so on and so forth. So we have variety of subledgers. Maybe we have payable, the subledger, and payable subledger has its own set of maybe documents or vouchers, what you may talk about. Like for example, we might have invoices in case of payables, and maybe in payables we are making a payments to the supplier, So those are the typical vouchers which we might have in case of maybe payables, and maybe we might then go ahead and have accounting entries for those vouchers. So we are processing these vouchers in the respective application, maybe payables, or we are processing this in the respective applications of maybe, let's say, receivables, and so on and so forth. And then eventually we are bringing the accounting entries. So each of these subledgers, they run a process called create accounting, and this create accounting process creates the subledger accounting entries, and those subledger accounting entries are eventually posted to GL. So each of these subledgers are expected to run their create accounting processes, and these create accounting process will be creating for that particular subledger the accounting entries which will eventually be transferred to GL. So maybe we will have accounting entries created, let's say for example for payables, we'll have accounting entries created maybe for receivables, and so on and so forth, and all these will be created in subledger accounting maybe area, or maybe you can say in a subledger. In a subledger, these accounting entries will be created, and eventually these accounting entries will be transferred to GL. So this will be actually a journal entry, but this journal entry will be a subledger journal entry. So this is a subledger journal, and this subledger journal eventually will be transferred over to GL. And maybe for that, we might probably again run a set of processes like transfer maybe subledger journal to maybe GL. So this kind of processes we might end up maybe running, and that process will transfer maybe the subledger journal into maybe GL. So that is how you can visualize maybe that the process flow from, let's say, payable to GL. So we are getting the GL journal, but that is coming in from payable invoices, and maybe when that transfer to journal entries to GL happens, it actually creates those journals in a staging area, and from that staging area, the journals are then eventually transferred to a GL. So this particular, the staging area is called as maybe a GL interface, and it stays there in GL interface, and from GL interface, the data goes into GL. So maybe the data will come into GL interface. Yeah. So as an implementation consultant, it is very critical to know this particular part of the flow, or even if it's a support person, maybe if you are an end user, it is probably not so important to go into so much of detail to understand. Maybe, yeah, as an end user, I need to know what is that I need to do for data entry of an invoice, what I need to do for matching an invoice to a purchase order. That is maybe an end user probably perspective. But when you're probably an implementation consultant or support engineer, or maybe a techno-functional person, yeah, or you're migrating from one product to another, this is important for us to know how the data is probably organized and what is the architecture of the product, And then ultimately, the journal import happens in the GL, and then we bring over maybe the journal into our maybe GL. Sorry. So we then bring the journal into GL. So these journals are imported journals. They are not manual journals now. They are imported journals. Okay, and these journals will come via various, maybe the subledger applications. So we can have journals which are manual. We can also import maybe the journals. Yeah, and the journals can come from various subledgers, maybe not just payables. It can come even from receivables. It can come maybe even from other applications. So yeah, maybe let's say for example receivables. Or maybe it might come from fixed assets. It might come from cash management. And this is all what I'm putting up here is also the scope of our course also. Okay, so we might probably have fixed assets. We might have probably cash management, where we do bank reconciliation, and they have their own set of maybe the vouchers. Maybe here the payment from the customer. Maybe in case of fixed assets, we are probably adding the assets, we are depreciating the assets, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that can vary from maybe the application to application. Maybe over here we are probably doing a bank reconciliation, and maybe that bank reconciliation entries might come up, or probably some adjustments if we are doing, that might probably come up, So those probably come from cash management and so on and so forth. And each of these subledger applications, they make use of the setups which are done at GL level. So whatever the setups we have in GL, those setups are being leveraged by all these. So these are some of the common setups, and those common setups are being leveraged by all the subledger application. And this subledger applications, eventually, after the vouchers are being processed, so we need to understand what is the voucher processing and at what stage from the voucher we can probably transfer maybe the accounting entries to GL, and maybe those accounting entries will be created in subledger, and probably from that subledger we can probably then go ahead and transfer the entries to maybe GL journals. So that is maybe the process which will bring the journals into GL. Now this is maybe the out of the box ready to use applications within Oracle Financials Cloud which we might use, and that follows the standard architecture which is probably described over here. But at times probably the journals might come from some other sources. Say for example, some legacy applications we have, and from that legacy application ongoing basis we might probably bring our journals, and maybe we would like to have those journals also being pushed to maybe GL. Yeah, and maybe we would like to have those journals also being imported into GL. So that could be a one-time activity during the migration, or this could be a repetitive exercise also, that you might probably have this legacy application continue to run, and maybe every night you might probably do a data load into probably, so you might probably do an import of journals into GL interface, and then probably you import those journals into GL. That could be also one possibility. Or another possibility is you are probably using an Excel. There are a lot of users who are probably using Excel, and they are probably writing the journals in Excel and then uploading those journals into GL interface, and they are uploading into the maybe our financials cloud. So all these possibilities are there, and maybe we can go ahead and probably bring those journals from those sources into GL interface and then run the journal input. So what is so different between these legacy application or Excel maybe versus maybe payables or receivables or fixed assets? The difference is that when you run a create accounting process, the create accounting process is not required for this particular set of sources. One thing. Second, that create accounting process means that there is a built-in logic which is written that how to account for AP invoice, how to account for AP payment. That particular logic is already written inside that create accounting process, and it makes use of the setup, and it reads the setup and then does the accounting entry accordingly. So that means you can configure your payable accounting in the subledger accounting. That is possible, and then you can be using that in your create accounting process. Whereas since you cannot use create accounting at all for the external sources, that means you cannot have a setup for running a create accounting for those external sources, when it comes to financial cloud. Having said that, there is one exception to this. One exception is if certain customers go ahead and implement a module called Financial Accounting Hub. If they implement this Financial Accounting Hub, then it allows you to bring from the legacy not just the accounting data straight away to GL interface. Instead, it allows you to bring your data which are transactions. So whatever the transactions you have in the source system, those transactions you can bring into your maybe the financials, maybe the cloud, and then on that you can go ahead and run create accounting. And then you run a create accounting as per the setup which you have, in your financial accounting hub. and that setup will be respected, and it will then create accounting entries for you in GL interface. That is one exception if customers have implemented Financial Accounting Hub. But if customer has not implemented Financial Accounting Hub and they have only plain standard Financial Cloud implementation, then in that case, that legacy data will not have create accounting process. It will have only upload to GL interface, and then we'll have journal import, and that journal import will be bringing the journals. Those journals will be posted, and then we'll have the posted balances, and then we can extract our reports. Now, when we extract the reports, there are a variety of tools which are provided for extracting the reports. There are numerous reporting tools which are provided, and first reporting tool for this kind of professional reports which are provided, and we are going to learn in the class also, and that is maybe Financial Reporting Studio. So we have Financial Reporting Studio, which comes from former Hyperion suite of products, and that was acquired by Oracle, and that is also now a professional reporting tool for maybe the professional reports like maybe your cash management reports, or maybe cash flow statement, or P&L, or balance sheet. These kind of reports are extracted using the Financial Reporting Studio. Beside that, many a times we have to run a transactional reports, like for example, I would like to know maybe how many AP invoices are due for payment in next 30 days. Some kind of an aging report, some kind of a transaction registers, which we would like to know. So Financial Reporting Studio is more about the accounting professional reports like balances by account code, by period, that's a professional report, which is addressing a particular requirement of P&L, balance sheet, cash flow statement. So that reporting tool is also designed in that fashion. The features which it provides are according to that requirement, But when we talk about transactional report, it is typical maybe a RDBMS database from where you would like to fetch the data and make the report, So here Oracle provides OTBI, and that is called Oracle Transactional BI. And this Transactional BI also has a lot of out-of-the-box ready-to-use reports, which are provided by Oracle. And on top of that, you are also given as a user, end user, super user, implementation consultant. You can also go ahead and write reports of your choices, your design requirements, So you can go ahead and write ad hoc analysis, and then you can go ahead and probably, use that for the purpose of your ad hoc analysis. Or maybe the end users can use maybe the tools like SmartView, and probably you can extract maybe the reports using maybe the Excel spreadsheet. So you can have a plugin in your Excel spreadsheet, and you can go ahead and probably extract maybe the information, and then you can probably present the information in form of charts and things like that, So these are a variety of reporting tools which are provided at maybe the transactional level or other requirements which you may have, And also there is an online, maybe the inquiry tool, and that an online inquiry tool is to inquire for the balance. So you have an account inquiry tool, and that allows you to make an inquiry into GL accounts to find out what are the balances, and then you can do a drill down, and then you can drill down to maybe subledger. You can drill down maybe to AP invoice, and so on and so forth. So it's a maybe a out-of-the-box, ready-to-use tool for doing the account inquiries. So this is a big picture of the Financials Cloud application. And just a moment, I'm going to log in into the system to show you. So maybe when you typically log in to a Financials Cloud application, it is a cloud-based solution. So it's not like former products like EBS or any other previous products. You don't need anything on your local desktop. Okay, you just need a URL, and you have physically no infrastructure installed in your company. You don't have any server, you don't have any maybe installed softwares in your premises. This is all on Oracle's cloud. And then you log in with your respective credentials, and after logging in, you will have as a user your own maybe the home page, and on that home page you might have a variety of applications to access, like procurement, say for example, or product management or risk management, depending upon your access privileges. Maybe receivables, maybe let's say for example payables, maybe general accounting. Maybe in general accounting, then maybe you might go to the journals, and then probably you might go ahead and look at maybe the journals to be created here. Yeah, you might probably, so in each of these, maybe, the work areas. So this is a journal work area. In journal work area, you then have probably maybe the option to go ahead and create journals or manage existing journals. So these are various tasks which you can perform in a particular work area. And maybe you can probably manage your journals when you would like to inquire the journals, which has probably come from maybe variety of maybe the sources, maybe let's say, for example, the journals which has come from maybe payables, and I would like to inquire for that. So I can go ahead and probably search for those journals in manage journal screen, and then I can play around with those, probably the journals here, or I can go ahead and create journals. So this is how your HTML Java based user interface will be there, and you will be dealing with maybe this kind of a UI to create maybe your various transactions, inquire for the data, or maybe even do the various business processes, So similarly, you might probably have access privileges for payables. Now, when you have a particular work area like journals, within journals, you might have, the variety of tasks. And again, these tasks can be subject to your job role. It can be subject to the security. So there are some users, like, for example, there are maybe account controllers, general controllers, financial controllers. They might have probably everything here, or maybe there is somebody called maybe a general accountant, That general accountant may probably have only create journal and manage journal, He may not probably have everything there. So that is also a possibility because of maybe the security. That there are certain people who might probably have access to everything, and there are certain people who may not probably have access to everything. I think someone has joined with probably microphone is open. May I request you to mute? Okay, so that is maybe a general accounting application, maybe, when you log in. Similarly, you might probably log into, let's say, payables, and then you might have an invoice work area, you might have a payments work area, and then eventually you might probably go ahead and create your invoices. Yeah, so now depending upon the work area and depending upon the real life business for, let's say, the payable team. So what is the requirement of a payable team? Depending upon the need of the payable team, you will find the various, maybe the features, and maybe you might find the options here to create invoices, manage invoices, and so on and so forth, or maybe, let's say, for example, you might be a receivables person, you might be a collections agent, you might be probably an, person who is entering the payments from the, customer. So you might probably then have accounts receivable work area, wherein you might probably manage invoices, you might probably manage receipts, you might enter the receipts, you might probably go ahead and post those receipts, and so on and so forth, So again, look at the look and feel. This is an account receivable work area, and the look and feel is different because depending upon the need of that particular, the user department and the business function, the, areas are designed accordingly, to suit their requirements. So you might find maybe a little bit of variations in the maybe the particular work area and the kind of options they provide, but in general, the architecture is going to remain standard. It's not going to vary significantly, or maybe, let's say, for example, someone might be part of, let's say, the assets team, and probably creating the fixed assets, depreciating the assets, or inquiring for the assets. So maybe they might have a particular work area according to maybe the fixed assets, maybe the requirements, So depending upon a particular business function, you might find maybe the work areas are designed accordingly and the tasks which are provided accordingly. Yeah. So this is what we are going to go into a deep dive also into our remaining classes, which are starting now from tomorrow. And we will be having a class every day in the morning, 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock. And would love to see all of you starting tomorrow. If you have any questions, I would like to make house open to ask questions. If I can clarify anything at this stage, please let me know.
Yeah, Parag, this is Arun. I have a question on the prerequisites. So the ideal candidates who should be attending for this training?
So ideally speaking, there is no prerequisite except one basic prerequisite I would recommend is you should have some basic accounting background, and not for course. This is not for the course I'm saying, but see, you are learning financials cloud, and ultimate objective is to either become a support staff or maybe an implementation consultant. That is the ultimate goal at some point, maybe let's say 2 years down the line, maybe 6 months down the line, 1 year down the line. Now, and this is a solution for, a finance department of a company which heavily deals with accounting. Though in a financials cloud, you don't have to set up, any accounting manually. That's not the requirement. Okay. But in order to do your job as a consultant, maybe let's say you are implementing for a customer and you want to probably design a chart of accounts for them. So when you want to design a chart of accounts, the fundamental thing which will come is maybe how that company does the accounting, for their operations, maybe how they are doing the accounting for their payables, how they are doing the accounting for their invoices, payments, So that basic accounting background will always help you, not maybe in the course, but in the long run, So I would recommend at some point, you guys should invest, some time to grasp this basic accounting concepts. And you don't have to really, this is not a rocket science. You guys are already engineers and maybe chartered accountants. Some of you guys are chartered accountants. So you already have this background. But those who are not accountants, maybe definitely you are some engineers, or maybe some science background. And let me tell you, engineering and science is more complex, than accounting, and I'll tell you how I say so. Though I'm also not an accountant, I'm also an engineer by education, and then I'm a cost accountant eventually. Yeah. But, why I say so, that anybody here engineer in the room today? We have anybody who is by background, education background? Are you an engineer?
Yeah, I am.
Wonderful. Yes. So what happens, Arun, when we study engineering in our classic Indian context of engineering, we have a 4 years of engineering. And in 4 years of engineering, we learn at least 4,000 different formulas. And maybe we apply those formulas. So as an engineer, our expertise lies in what? Learning new formulas, okay, at maybe very fast speed, and able to apply, that particular formula. That's the skill which we develop, in engineering. The difference in engineering and accounting, being an engineer and then become an accountant, is it's a one formula which is taught over 5 years and practiced over maybe hundreds of years. Okay. So it's just one formula. So here, the formula doesn't change. That means being an engineer, for you, it is just going to be the 4001 formula, 4001st formula. That's it. It's nothing, no big deal. So you will learn. That's not going to be difficult at all. Now the challenge lies in that why do they learn over 5 years? Why? Because they need to understand that how this formula is being compliant time and again, and again and again and again, and probably we do not have any issues, probably in complying to that particular formula and extracting the information ultimately in the balances the way we would like to have, in case of P&L balance sheet, and it's probably a reliable result, So maybe we just need to learn that one formula, and maybe for that, what kind of a background is required? Maybe I would say standard 11, the first year of maybe commerce, yeah, the bookkeeping course, yeah, that much knowledge is required. That much knowledge will going to help you to become a good financial consultant. Now, when it comes to reporting tools like OTBI or Financial Reporting Studio, do I need any prerequisite background? Of course not. In fact, these tools are new, completely new. But yeah, you should know, basic fundamental reasoning. Why do we need a report? Why do we need a profit and loss report? why do we need a transactional report? So that basic reasoning is required, but no other prerequisite is required for learning those tools. And all the tools are web-based, so there is no problem at all, and they are absolutely designed to the highest level of simplicity, because the way Oracle has designed these products are aiming for end users to use them with a lot of simplicity. So many places you will find drag and drop, a lot of wizards, a lot of ready to use things. So it just creates things which are quite simplified in nature. So you really don't need any particular background when it comes to tools. But one last thing you might probably require, and that will also come eventually, is that you should have some process background. Like for example, how procure to pay process works in a real life business, not an ideal situation. In real life business, how procure to pay works, or maybe how, let's say for example, invoice to collection process happens from AR perspective. How bank reconciliation happens. These are some of the fundamental functional concepts, and those functional concepts will help you to capitalize on whatever you are going to learn, not only in this product, but for that matter, any ERP product. It could be SAP, it could be Oracle, it could be PeopleSoft, it could be EBS, whatever. It doesn't matter. But that knowledge will assist you in all those areas. So I would recommend, maybe probably pay some attention on this. And if you are not a process person, you're probably a support person, you're not dealing with process person, during the class I would make some recommendations, and probably you can follow those during the class itself, so that you start building that knowledge, because the process knowledge is going to be extremely useful. See, you become an implementation consultant for whom? Ultimately for end users, right? You will be implementing a solution for end users. So if you don't understand how an end user job is being performed, then your solution will no longer remain relevant. Your solution will only remain relevant if you provide the context to the end users, maybe the work process, the business process, and maybe you provide the solution around that. Otherwise, you must have experienced that there is an end user resistance is always there, that they don't want to change. They don't want to go for a new things, they don't want to adapt to the change. Why? Because they are already, maybe settled with one process. They don't want to go for a new process. So it's extremely important for you to understand as an implementation consultant or even a support person how a business process functions, so that you can either provide a solution or you can improvise their working. Maybe some shortcuts, maybe you reduce the steps, automate some steps for them, maybe reduce the number of clicks for them. These are the things that really matter, for end user on the ground. That there are people who say, oh, yesterday I was doing only 2 clicks, in a particular product. Now in this product, I will have to do 7 clicks. This is how a resistance will come from an end user, and probably you wouldn't be able to provide a solution on the basis of clicks. If you understand the process, yes, then probably you might say that maybe this is a process. Let's get rid of maybe this. Maybe let's automate this transfer to GL process. Let's automate this journal import. Maybe you just create an invoice. That's it. From after you finish invoice, I will take care of this. Now the person will be happy. Oh, I just have to focus only on the invoice. I don't have to focus on create accounting. I don't have to focus on this. I don't have to focus on GL journal. And I just have to run a report, and that report will be giving me an idea whether my accounts are balanced with the GL balances. Fantastic. Now, because you understand the process, you are able to show him that what are the steps which are being automated for him, and maybe what steps he is required to focus on, and intellectual is required to be provided by him. Sounds good, Arun? Does that answer your question?
Yes, Parag. And
I'll tell you the way the class will function is, I'll be explaining the concepts, and that time I might use this whiteboard, which I'm using right now. I'll make, I don't use any static PowerPoint. I'll be making the PowerPoint on the fly like this, exactly the similar way which I'm making, and I'll be explaining the concepts to all of you. And then after I explain the concept, I'll be, showing you the demonstrations in the system. say for example, I now explain the concept of this process. Then I'll take you to the system. I'll create one AP invoice. I'll create accounting entry for that, and then I'll transfer over to GL. I'll create one manual journal and post it, and maybe you can see that. And maybe let's say eventually I explain the concept of how the ledger is being set up. What is the architecture of a ledger? Then actually I'll go and set up my own ledger, and I'll probably configure the ledger. And probably eventually we will see how that ledger can be assigned to the user. So that part will go into a demonstration. So concepts I will be explaining in this PowerPoint, and then demonstrations I'll be doing it in the system, and that you will be seeing in all the classes in the same format. And we will be starting with GL, and we will starting with the GL setups, and then eventually, but yes, this will be the in the backdrop of all our discussions as we progress. This will be in the backdrop of all our discussions which we are going to do. And we'll start with GL, we'll understand the setups in GL, and then probably we'll get into AP, we'll understand the not procure to, but maybe we'll understand the payable process, how to get an invoice, how to probably make the payments, how to probably then for payments, what are the prerequisites, maybe a bank setup. For invoice, we need a supplier setup. So we'll then understand the supplier setup. We'll then understand the bank setup. And then probably we'll make the payments, we'll create the invoices, we'll understand the invoice processing. Maybe invoice needs to be entered, invoice needs to be validated, invoice needs to be maybe accounted, invoice needs to be paid. We will go through those processes as a concept, and then we'll see the same process in the system also. Absolutely. For payables, for receivables, for fixed assets, for cash management, and GL. And then finally, we'll be looking at the reporting. Make sense?
Yep. And the last question, how about BI publisher? Are we going to cover that too? Because I saw a PowerPoint where it said there are 3 reporting tools. One is OTBI and BIP.
Yes. So we'll understand the BIP concept, but we are not developing any report as such because we don't have maybe the data accordingly. But definitely we will understand what is BIP,